A new report by Friends for Conservation and Development, or FCD, reveals that over 3,500 acres of forest in the Vaca Forest Reserve and Chiquibul ecosystem have already been cleared. The ranches cross Belize's protected areas, and many point fingers across the border.
Although we have been, collecting and doing monitoring and enforcement, along with the Belize Defense Force and the police in the areas of Caballo, Valentin, Rio Blanco, Cebada, which are right along the border. The study that was done and that ended up, the research concluded last year in 24. The result shows that the Vaca Forest Reserve, which is 17 kilometers of the border with Guatemala, there is approximately 1,700 acres being used by cattle ranchers.
So that's the Vaca Forest Reserve alone. In a Chiquibul ecosystem, the number is slightly greater.
There is approximately 1,900 acres that we consider to be pasture lands used for cattle ranching. These are purely Guatemalans. What it shows then is that cattle ranching has not been halted, that activity. It is crossing the adjacency zone of 1 kilometer. There are particular hotspot areas that we can clearly see. Valentin in the Caracol area is really one which is targeted. South of Caballo Conservation Post, that's another one. And then we see the guys north of Rio Blanco.
The ranches in the Rio Blanco area are controlled by a Guatemalan family known as the Jimenez, and they've been expanding further into Belizean territory for the past few years. So despite joint patrols to dismantle fences and reclaim land, ranchers often rebuild, and there are bigger risks.
There have been operations along with rangers and the BDF primarily along the area to cut the fences, remove the posts. That has happened, and I have to thank the BDF over the more recent months that there has been a much more kind of a robust program to do that. But there's so much in terms of fields out there and fences, so much so that Guatemalans, after 2 months, they will return back and put back again a fence. We have realized that even though we have been highlighting cattle ranching, we still have not been that decisive in putting in the interventions to really halt this. It has to be a multi-pronged approach also, like many of these things. But it shows that we still have to do a lot of work. It is rugged terrain, it is difficult to reach, it's difficult to be out in that zone, but that's what it's going to take if we really want to deal with this.
So it's going to take resources, more boots on the ground, more and better equipment, especially communication equipment, and of course, money for the Belize Defense Force and its soldiers. FCD co-manages the Chiquibul National Park. It is the BDF that enforces the law. And just recently, Minister of Defense and Border Security Oscar Mira told reporters that the BDF will no longer be neglected.
The Prime Minister has also been very gracious in allowing us to access more funds to ensuring that we buy the equipment and that we have the training that the BDF and the Coast Guard deserves to do their work.
More and better equipped and trained soldiers will be needed. That's because the cattle ranching isn't being done only by poor Guatemalans trying to survive. It is reportedly being orchestrated by Guatemalan drug lords, and it's being called narco cattle ranching.
The study also is able to highlight that there could be nexus within the drug cartels also. We only can go in only to describe in terms of what are references in the study that we did. We don't have the pure, research data that can show that, because we are not into that kind of field. That has to be done by someone else. But only looking by what Guatemalans are seeing on their landscape, on their areas like Laguna del Tigre. Laguna del Tigre still have 30,000 heads of cattle right now, and that's within the Maya Biosphere Reserve. They are still also trying to tackle that problem. There, yes, it's directly nexus with drug lords. What they would tell us and what other references tell us is that once you see the trend, it is very possible that could also be the same here.
The environmental toll is severe. Ancient forests are felled for non-native grasses. pushing out native wildlife and destroying biodiversity. The report also calls for stronger patrols, modern surveillance, tougher tracking of cattle trade, and new diplomatic ties with Guatemala. But the question remains, can Belize keep its forests from becoming collateral in a cross-border cattle and narco frontier? Reporting for News 5, I am Hipolito Novelo.